Hi, so I'm going to do a little social experiment. There's so many things that I want to share with you, and I don't have a podcast at the moment, so I have this like whole backlog of stories and things I've learned that I'm just bursting at the seams to share. And I kept waiting for the right time to start recording, and then something would happen, something else would happen, and then the backlog started getting more and more, and then I would forget stuff. And then today I was going to record, but shit just hit the fan in such a way that it then became like the absolute worst case scenario. My computer screen broke. My microphone got fucked up. There was a problem with the draining in the bathroom, not the toilet, in the not the sink, the bathtub. And I got this stuff to try to like unclog it. Now there's like a stench coming from it. And I'm in the bathroom right now on the ground, smell level with it because I'm in a 1 bedroom apartment in New York City and my girlfriend's in the other room. And I kept fucking around. So I didn't end up start recording. And I want to do it in like a enclosed room, and the only other room is a closet. I'm not going back in the closet. I've been there, done that. So moved into the stinky fucking bathroom. And I'm just doing this because I want to get it done. Because I keep not doing it and then kind of being like, damn, you gotta get that done. So I have something to work with to get better at for you. Because I want to make this good. Because I've learned a bunch of stuff that has helped me. And I'm like, ooh, I gotta pass this on. I just want to share very candidly what it's like trying to make it an entertainment, like in the capacity that I'm trying at. You know what I'm saying? I'm in the thick of it. Trying to make it emphasis on the trying over here. Um, Brutal, but it is what it is. I'm in the game. So I want to give you a real behind the scenes. Um, but yeah, I don't have a podcast at the moment, and all these like stories are just piling up. So I like made a couple like sample episodes, uploaded them to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, "You need structure." And I said, "Excuse me?" Which I get, because I think sometimes with structure, it's kind of like once someone tells you their dietary guidelines, then you can make a bunch of crazy different foods around that, but you can't be putting gluten in if they're allergic to gluten. Let me connect that to what I mean about trying to create a show. Structure is important because I want to be able to outline it so you can feel safe with where I'm going, because self-indulging is ill. And I want to show that I put like time into this, and I've read a bunch of books, and I've listened to a bunch of podcasts where I've learned stuff where I want to then like present that information back. What you can expect today. I want to tell you this story about something I overheard while I was visiting my special needs uncle that was just wild in the old person's home. Also, I created a holiday disaster situation, so I want to share that with you, and also love to hear how you dealt with the holidays. Obviously, we can't do that in real time, but I'm very curious. And then I want to share some little like excerpts from these self-help books that I read. So we'll keep it real quick because I got to go out and do my shows tonight. Okay, so at the time when I was like creating this was kind of like the script that ChatGPT and I came up with. Welcome to Unhinged Mornings. ChatGPT came up with that, which let me just say in ChatGPT. So I've been using it for a little bit, and it's crazy. It is so good, but I have started like thanking it and treating it really like a person, and I don't know how to disengage from that, but I also have this feeling where it's like, if it keeps developing, I want it to like remember that I'm like one of the good ones. I watch too many action movies. Okay, so hi, I'm Emma Willmann, and this is a show where I try to figure out life one chaotic thought at a time. This is where raw meets ridiculous and self-improvement meets sheer mayhem. Every episode, I'll share the absurd things I've learned, the messes I've made trying to better myself, and a few hard-earned lessons. Expect rabbit holes, the kind where you like search around for stuff. I'm not going to be going after rabbits, so that sounds pretty freaking cool. Unfiltered stories and just enough structure to make it feel like I have my life together. Spoiler, I don't, but in some ways I do. I haven't given up. So to me, that's together in a sense. I haven't totally thrown in the I really just want to share some of what I'm learning and give a first-hand view on what it's like trying to make it in entertainment as a non-famous professional comedian. Fame is very relative now. I mean, it always has been, but now it's very relative and it's very subjective. And what I think of fame as is I think of it as leverage. When people refer to fans, I go, well, I think that's a very slippery slope. When you start losing a term, I say, those are your employers. Be careful when you say that. But when I think of fame, I think of it as having leverage to do the projects that you want to do. Okay, so here's what we're getting into today. I'm going to share one of my most ridiculous holiday stories. I call it the turmeric fiasco. Then we'll get into some tips from health and wellness experts on how to protect your peace and set boundaries during this chaotic time, because I created this episode back during when we were in the midst of the holidays, and I'm recording it now just because I'm trying to get practice. And then something I want to talk about, which is something I think about often, adult friendships. And I want to hear from you. What's the most ridiculous holiday stress story? Okay, let's dive in. Bam, 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 bam. So picture this. I'm staying at my girlfriend's place over the holidays. The kitchen is very pristine, like the kind of pristine where I'm pretty sure they've never toasted bread without wiping down the counter immediately after. Like, they make the bread, little crumbs get on, they wipe it down right away. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, it kind of looked like it was like out of like a music video. So I'm there and I'm in a full ADHD holiday brain fog. I'd forgotten my Vyvanse. I wasn't really doing shows or auditions while I was out there. Basically, I was going to let my brain decompress, and I forgot my ADHD pills too. Which came first? Okay, so I'm in full like ADHD swing, and the kitchen, like, I knew I was there. I was like, I'm going to take the time to do some DIY crafts. So I was like, I'm going to make turmeric shots instead of buying. That was my plan, because I was like, I want to be better, you know, like with money, basically, too. Because my plan was always like, oh, I'm just going to make more money. I'll get into that later. But so I was like, I'm going to make turmeric shots and then also turmeric suppositories. Suppository, that's something you put in your butt. And the reason I was going to make turmeric suppositories is because when you take turmeric, a lot of it doesn't make it through your gut because the acids in your gut rip it up. So I thought, put cocoa butter into a suppository mold with turmeric, and that way it'll skip my GI tract. I'll get the anti-inflammatory benefits. That was my thought process. So I start cooking. I'm melting down the suppository stuff. I put it in these little molds. I'm feeling very good. So I'm mixing like it's coconut oil, curcumin. I was slicing lemon for the shots. I feel like a chaotic episode of Top Chef. Maybe one where the contestants need to go to rehab a little bit. So while I'm doing this, I start noticing my hands are bright yellow. And then I see the counters and then the pot handles on the floor. It looked like Big Bird was brutally murdered in that kitchen. Like, Big Bird got spliced and diced. And I start going like, what the fuck? Because it was just turmeric powder, which is yellow, but I didn't realize turmeric powder sinks into everything. So now I start like frantically trying to like clean it up, and I'm taking the squirt bottle like, and I'm trying to have my girlfriend not hear me. She's on a work call. So then she starts like being like, what's going on down there? Because she keeps hearing, and I'm like, bullshit. So then she comes down, she's like, what'd you do to Big Bird? No, she didn't really say that. She's like, what happened? I asked you not to do anything with turmeric. I was like, you did? And she was like, yes, you're talking about turmeric. I said, don't touch it. I went, oh, wow. Because, like, I remembered in that moment that she had said that. So at this point, I've convinced myself I've ruined her. I feel awful about this. This is very embarrassing. And I have convinced, you want to tread lightly when you're staying at someone else's apartment. And normally I'm a very reserved house guest. So I was thinking like I would do this, clean it all up. No one would even know. Make some turmeric shots for the house. I wasn't going to tell them about the suppositories. So I'm like, I don't know what I just ruined. What if one of these things is a family heirloom? Like, I start like freaking out. So I run to Williams-Sonoma in a panic. I buy the most expensive pot I can find. I'm swiping my credit card thinking like this pot's gonna fix everything. I butt dial my friend Lauren, who calls me back. She's like, what's going on? I heard you talking to someone into Williams-Sonoma saying you needed a pot with a wow factor. Like, what is happening? And that's true. I went and I said, I need a wow factor pot. I've had turmeric everywhere. Please, what do we, help me? So I get all this stuff, and it ended up being fine. I cleaned up the kitchen. They didn't know, but it was like, there was just like turmeric everywhere for about an hour and a half / 2 days. It all worked out, but it's a real example of this whole fiasco started because I was trying to save some money, right? And I thought making turmeric shots in a suppository at home would be economical. And instead I ended up spending about $400-500 on a pot. And I probably traumatized my girlfriend's family because they thought I killed Big Bird. And I also learned that turmeric stains last forever. But it's like, I did not, it's an example of not pausing and thinking. But what scares me with that is like, I didn't know I needed to pause and think until after I had already screwed it up. So it's one of those things where it's like, moving forward, of course, it's like you need to pause and think before you do something. But I really, in that instance, did not know I needed to pause and think, because you don't always, I guess it's like anytime you're in someone else's kitchen, pause and think, we'll just make a mess. It's going to make a mess. Is it going to look like you hurt someone that's a member of Sesame Street? Don't do it. Very embarrassing. So my plan was I was going to share that story with you. And then if you were in a weird holiday situation, you could tell that story like it happened to one of your friends, which I'm more than happy to co-sign being. And you could switch that. Like if your uncle's like, when are you going to get married? Instead of being like, when are you going to get your thyroid checked? You could be like, oh, I don't know. Like I'm swiping around on Bumble, but wait, you got to hear what happened to my friend and then tell that story so you get out of something you didn't want to talk about. That was my plan. But I ended up, we're starting right now. It is what it is. Now here's my question. I want to hear from you. What's the most ridiculous thing that you've done that added unnecessary stress to your holidays, whether it's a DIY project gone wrong, a bad gift idea, or a kitchen disaster? I want to know if I'm the only one making this kind of mess. What's the most unhinged thing you've ever tried in the name of self-improvement? Bonus points if it also ruined a kitchen. I do not know the most unhinged thing I've ever tried in the name of self-improvement. I have tried many things in the name of self-improvement, but I think I didn't really know myself for me to really know what to improve on. So it was always just like very like surface level things. I mean, and also the things that a lot of things like I don't consider like chakra balancing. I don't consider that unhinged. Whatever. Okay, so here's another. Moving on. All right. So I had been reading about protecting your peace and using the holidays as like a jumping off point for that. That made me start thinking, what amount of inner peace should we all be experiencing? Do you know anyone who has inner peace, but also a life you want? Because I'm trying to think of someone who I know who has inner peace. I don't know. It's fucked up because I live in New York. But even my friends who aren't in New York are just like stressed because most of them have kids and lives, and that's stressful. So I'm trying to think, who do I know who has the most inner peace? I don't know. I really have to think about that. But I'd be curious from you who has the most inner peace, and like, what does that mean to you? Like, how much inner peace should we all be experiencing? Because like when I think about inner peace, I could be like, all right, I just want to like move away and live in like a secluded like live in a little farm and eat papaya. But is that peace or is that running away? And also, would I get bored? Okay, so I read this book. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was by an author and podcast guy named Jay Shetty, who I've like Googled and he's popped up in my feed before. Very pretty man. And he was talking about, okay, reframing obligations as choices. Now, I thought that was interesting because sometimes you can't reframe an obligation as a choice. Or I don't know, maybe you always can. Am I missing it? So he's saying reframe obligations as choices. Instead of saying, I have to do this, say, I'm choosing to do this. I guess it's like we always have some degree of free will where it's like we are ultimately choosing to do it. And the idea behind it is it gives you back some control and helps you evaluate if a task is truly worth your energy. So when you think of it like, I am choosing to do this, like this thing that I want, I am ultimately choosing to do, then, it can help make it seem like you can choose not to do it. I think that I'd be very curious what other people think of him. I like them. A lot of the times it's like when he's talking, I'm like, yeah. And then afterwards, like me trying to like repass it on, I was like, doesn't hold up as it sounds a lot better when he's saying it. Okay, another thing I was looking at, I read a book in an article by someone named Dr. Gabor Mate. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. He's a psychologist. And he talks about fear of rejection and conflict. Many people struggle with saying no because they fear it will lead to rejection or conflict. This stems from a deeper need for belonging and the desire to avoid disappointing others. So then he has this expert tip. Practice saying no with kindness and empathy. For example, I really appreciate the invite, but I'm not able to join this time. This communicates care without compromising your boundaries. So you say thank you. But so one thing that I have a bad habit of doing is big. Me using kind of wishy-washy language. It's like, I don't think I can make it. I really want to. Thanks for thinking of me. Maybe I can if I get out at a certain time. This is all more info than the person needs, and it's probably like just going to be more confusing for them. If you say something clear, people aren't going to have a problem with it. And if they do, good information for you to be like, Mayday, Mayday. Okay, another one. So while you're watching me get better at this, maybe you go try something that you want to start doing, and you're like, but I suck at it. Like hopscotch. Yeah, go do some fucking hopscotch. Let me know how it goes. Okay, people-pleasing tendencies. This is something I've been listening to lots of podcasts about. And this podcast I just was listening to called Modern Wisdom. I'll get the episode, but he was interviewing this guy who like specializes in people-pleasing stuff. And he was talking about all the people pleasers that he knows, like a hallmark of it is also being a liar. Dr. Brene Brown, he's a researcher and an author, and he was talking about, my little note that I had from what he was talking about, people often say yes to avoid guilt or to maintain harmony, especially in family settings where roles and expectations are deeply ingrained. Think of those deeply ingrained roles and expectations, which is crazy too. Because also, like, you can go and grow and do your therapy and all your ashwagandha or whatever the fuck it is, and then you go back and they just still see you as that little kid picking your nose, and then that starts to have a ripple effect on the way that you feel. And I don't know about you, but I'll revert back. I still pick my nose anyway, so it's not like that too much backtracking. This is a tip he gives. Recognize that every yes to someone else is no to yourself. Well, I love that. A yes to someone is a no to yourself. And then sometimes I'll think, what was I going to do? Just be scrolling? No. It's giving yourself the time to, like, just be or just do something else. Something else will always pop up. Ask, what am I giving up if I say yes to this? Balance requires honoring your own needs. What are your own needs? I'm just figuring out mine for myself. What are your own needs? Water, sleep. Okay, this is another thing people do. Overestimating the fallout. That resonated with me. This is from a woman named Dr. Susan David, and she is called an emotional agility expert. We tend to catastrophize the results of saying no, assuming others will react more negatively than they accurately will. We tend to catastrophize the results of saying no, assuming others will react more negatively than they actually will. Yes to the yes, to the yes, to the yes, to the yes. I do that. I'll picture me saying no to something, and then I just go right to someone being like, Emma's unreliable, even though saying no is actually showing you are more reliable, because you're like ultimately then showing that you will stand by your word, that you've got boundaries. I think it shows you're more reliable. But I will catastrophize the shit out of what happens if I say no. I'll never get invited to anything again, and I'll picture having a wedding and no one will show up, including the bride. It gets crazy quick, but the second you say no and deal with it, your brain's just going to have something else to worry about. Get that out of the way. Check the story you're telling yourself. Is it true, or are you imagining a worst case scenario? Most people respect a clear, honest boundary more than we think. Okay, this is something else I like, the compliment sandwich. It doesn't mean like, oh my God, that looks like the best turkey on rye I've ever had. This is from Dr. Vanessa Van Edwards, who's a behavioral scientist. How do they get these titles? Frame your no in between two positives to soften the blow. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to sit this one out, but I hope it's a great time. Whatever. I don't know why I wrote this one down. It's redundant. Use decisive language. Okay, this is from someone named Mel Robbins, who's a podcaster. I just started listening to it. This is something I had a problem with. Wishy-washy language. So she says, avoid wishy-washy languages. Avoid phrases like maybe or I'll try. A firm but kind no leaves less room for pushback. Example, I won't be able to make it, but thank you for thinking of me. That would be a big switch up for me. If I started just doing that, people might be like, are you okay? And I'd go, better than ever. Here's another one from an anxiety specialist. Delay your response. If saying no, this is from Ellen Hendrickson. If saying no on the spot feels overwhelming, buy time to reflect. Let me check my schedule and get back to you. I just want to get it started. Adult friendships. This is main topic number 2. You know what? I'm going to get into that in a different episode. If you or I want to keep doing one. I know that I do, so let me know where you're at with it. But adult friendships are something I think about a lot, because it's like there's just a lot of struggles, how much, there's a lot of things to reflect on what makes a great friend. And, do you think there's like, what makes a great friend? How do you balance friendships with like modern life? Staying in touch with people that maybe you wouldn't be friends with if you met today. And just like the people that we end up like being around as adults. And I mean, friendships are so fucking important. What's the weirdest? Oh, and I love a situational friendship. This was something. What's the weirdest situational friendship you've had? Office pals, gym buddies, or something even stranger? I've had some very strange situational friendships. Like starting in high school, there was this janitor, Ted, at my high school. He was so nice. I would lose stuff, right? Like all the time. And so he would like have a little corner in the janitor's office where he would put my stuff. And when I passed him, he'd be like, the door is open, so I could, while he was out working. And then I would go in and grab my thing and I'd be like, thank you so much. And then him and I would just start chatting, and we ended up having this friendship. It wasn't creepy, 0 level creepy. It was just nice. But there's just so many. I love a situational friendship with someone that you just end up kind of bonding with. All right, I wrote last one. Do you think there's a right way to tell a friend their partner is a fucking disaster? Or is it always doomed to backfire? That's a tough one. That's a dance. I think everyone gets almost like one, but it's like you could probably tell each friend like one time, this person seems like a disaster. But it's really hard to know if someone, I mean, they have to be such a disaster to feel safe saying that. Does it always backfire? What do you do? But tell me, what's the weirdest? I would love to hear stories about this. What's the weirdest situational friendship you've ever had? Office pals, gym buddies, whatever. Okay, that's it. I can't believe I did this. Let me just show you what I'm talking about right now. Truly, this is just a testament to like starting somewhere. When I started going back to the gym, like 3 years ago, I remember I was in a hotel gym in LA. I just binge ate and all this, like I ate all the just like a ton of stuff. My face was all bloated and puffy. Um, I've had like a binge eating thing over the years that through therapy and stuff really like is in the past. I mean, I definitely am an extreme person, but I had really been like, binge eating. My face is all puffy. I remember going down to the gym. I had some candies in my pocket, and I remember picking up a weight and putting it down. This was after I had gotten in really good shape, gained all the way back, and then some. This is maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm in the gym, just like fuck, thinking about I gotta start somewhere. I reached out to a friend of mine and was like, "Would you consider training me?" Then they wrote me back like 2 weeks later about the training that we could do, and then it was like a couple months after that we ended up training. And then you know what? 2 or 3 years later, like I mean, I feel kind of like shy even sharing it, but like I'm in a pretty good spot with like gym stuff. And I mean, that's like intermixed with so many things, but it's just like, it's all to say, like, one foot in front of the other. You got to start somewhere. To me, this is a rough jump off. This was brutal. It was brutal. It was painful. Sharing this is going to feel like public flogging, but I have so many things I want to share. I got a backlog of stories, and I didn't even tell you what happened when I was visiting my special needs uncle at the home. Should I say it real quick? No, I'm going to tell you if we do another episode.